Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason.
It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been his heart was 2 sizes too small. Whatever the reason, his heart, his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Who's, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm-lighted windows below in their town.
Tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys, and then over noise, that's the one thing he hated, the noise.
For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath, and they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow's Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled, with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming.
All the Who's young and old would sit down to feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. They'd feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beef, and that was one thing the Grinch couldn't stand in the least.
And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They would stand hand in hand and the Who's would start singing.
They'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing. The more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with this now. I must stop this Christmas from coming, but how? Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea.
I know what just to do. The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and coat. And he chuckled and clucked this great Grinchy trick. His coat and his hat, I looked just like Saint Nick.
All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found.
Did that stop the old Grinch? No, he simply said, if I can't find the reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, and he took some red thread and tied a big horn on the top of his head.
Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max.
Then the Grinch said gadap, and the sleigh started down
toward the homes where the Who's lay snooze in their town.
All the windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were dreaming sweet dreams without care.
When he came to the first little house on the square, this is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed on the roof with empty bags in his fist.
He slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings he grew into the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk, with a smile most unpleasant,
around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns
and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards,
tricycles,
popcorn and plums. And he stuffed them in bags, then the Grinch, very nimbly, stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney. He slunk to the icebox. He took the Who feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took the last can of Who hash. The Grinch stuffed the food up the chimney with glee. And now the Grinch up, stuff up the tree. And the Grinch got the tree and he started to shove, when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove.
He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who, who's no more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed for a cup of cold water.
She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know, that Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie and he thought it up quick.
Why, my sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and I'll bring it back here.
And his fib fooled the child and patted her head and got her a drink and sent her to bed. When Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up.
Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney, himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire.
And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. He did the same thing to the other Who houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who mouses.
It was dawn, or the Who's still abed, or the Who's still asnooze, when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsels, the trimmings, the trappings.
3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it.
Pooh pooh to the Who's, he was grinchishly humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming.
They're just waking up. I know what they'll do. The mouse will hang open for a minute or two. Then the Who's down in the Whoville will all cry boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear.
And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, but then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, it sounded very merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very.
And he stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. He shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all.
He hasn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or the other, it came just the same. And the Grinch with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow stood puzzling. How could it be so?
It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes or bags, and he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzle was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before.
Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day.
And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light.
And he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, cut the roast beast.